My mind won't stop. The mind chatter was relentless. I was banging on those windows, and then there was this moment where I could then see my reflection. And it was someone I didn't recognize. Something
Yeah.
that self-awareness has done for me is realize that I'm actually a miracle. And like everyone else is a miracle as well, but they just don't know it.
In this episode of Midlife Unfiltered, we explore the quiet but powerful journey of self-awareness. What does it really mean to observe your thoughts, your reactions, and the patterns shaping your life? Through an honest and deeply personal conversation with my friend Paul Francis, we unpack how moments of struggle can become the catalyst for profound change. Together, we explore the inner systems that drive our behaviour, why self-awareness can feel both liberating and confronting, and how learning to observe ourselves can ultimately change the way we move through the world. Enjoy.
You're always learning self-awareness every day, and you're a student of self-awareness, never a master.
Welcome back to another episode of Midlife Unfiltered. I am so thrilled with our guest today. In fact, it's the first time I've interviewed a male on Midlife Unfiltered. So today I'm joined by someone, and he's been a part of my world for a long time, sort of in and out a bit, a friend. He's a deep thinker and someone who's spent decades observing how complex systems work, not just in technology, but within people. Paul Francis began his career as an IT systems engineer, spending over 2 decades with the British Diplomatic Services, travelling the world and working with secure global communication systems. But somewhere along the way, through travel, culture, fatherhood, and his very own human struggles with depression and anxiety, his focus shifted from understanding external systems to understanding the internal one. Out of that journey, he created a ship of thoughts, a simple but powerful framework that helps us observe our conditioning, our thinking, and our behaviour. It's really about one thing: self-awareness. The kind that doesn't just sound good in theory, but actually changes how you see yourself and the world around you. Today, we're talking about what it really means to become self-aware and why that shift can alter the course of your life. I am super excited to welcome Paul Francis. Thanks for being here, Paul.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me. I feel very honored to be a part of this journey of yours because we have been, we've been walking a path over the last, probably 15 years.
Yeah, indeed.
And we've both been struggling, growing. Life hits us with certain things and we kind of keep on moving forward. So it's my honor to be sitting next to you virtually.
I love that. And I love that you're the first man that I'm having on our interview. I couldn't think of anyone that's more appropriate to come on and sort of share this wisdom, because I think, as women, we get a little caught up in listening to other women, but I know the work that you're doing is really powerful. And I think you have something very powerful to share. And by the way, men go through midlife too.
Absolutely, yes, they do. Yeah, and like the thing, self-awareness is, we've all got a brain, haven't we? Whether you're a male or female, they work slightly differently, but I think the basic operating system is the same, and that's what self-awareness is working on the basic operating system.
So let's start right there. Like, what does self-awareness mean to you when you talk about self-awareness?
Yeah, that's a really good question because there's so many different versions of what self-awareness is. I guess I like to simplify things. So self-awareness to me is first of all starting to observe yourself. And I'm quite surprised at how many people don't really observe their thoughts and observe their feelings, observe their behaviors and why they do things. Um, and I guess, well, I can't blame them because I probably spent 40 years of my life not observing myself.
Mm,
So yeah, I guess self-awareness is being aware of this complex system. I like to use analogies, and I guess the analogy I've got for a ship of thoughts is to have this big, massive, expensive super yacht inside your head, and most of us, don't have a clue how to actually run it, operate it, sail it, navigate it. Yeah, and we just kind of, we kind of suck it and see and just navigate the sea of life with all its storms and all its obstacles and all those enemy ships, and we navigate it without any thought. And then what we tend to do, because I can tell very simply, when someone's not self-aware is when they blame everyone else and life
Mm.
for the way they feel and think.
Yeah. I've got this picture, do you know that moment in Titanic when they're standing on the front of the ship and they've got their arms out wide and they're standing there looking, and I kind of feel like that analogy you've just used is like that. Everyone's just standing on the front and looking out around them, but they're not turning around and looking at the ship itself.
Yes, absolutely. That's a great analogy. I'll have to use that. But I mean, also, I mean, it's also looking back and observing your ship and observing. I kind of,
The wake.
yeah, what the wake, but also looking at your thoughts. You know, the kind of thought clouds that come out of the funnel, because they're really important as well. And the alarm bells, the internal guidance system, as I use in the analogy, but also what I do along the journey is get people to look up as well, and that's really important, and to start observing themselves separate from the ship. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's interesting, isn't it, when we and I know exactly what you mean. When we meet someone who isn't self-aware and you're kind of like, "Oh," and you can hear it in the way they speak, in the words that they're saying, just in their view of the world generally.
Mm. Yeah, and I guess the journey of self-awareness, you do tend to look for people who are more self-aware, so it starts it's like opening a can of worms. I'm sure you understand this, Margit, you know? It's
Yeah.
like you don't really you don't really have anything in common with the people that you used to. So it's kind of can be a lonely journey, self-awareness, and it's also a journey when you see lots of people, see people who I sometimes educate, I sometimes do workshops with, and they say, Paul, I'm now self-aware. Thank you very much for that. I know that I haven't done a good job, because self-awareness, you can never reach it. It's always it's a destination that you can never reach, and you're always learning self-awareness every day. And you're a student of self-awareness, never a master.
Yeah, and I love that because it invites us to come back to the basics of self-awareness rather. I really feel like so many people are looking for this magic blue pill that will make life easier or make life flow a bit better. And there's so much truth in what you say that actually this is a work in progress. This is something we must be conscious of every day. And even when you have a level of self-awareness, you still do slip in and out of
Mm.
self-awareness.
Yeah,
I may have done that yesterday.
I do it every day in the car. I kind of snap out
Yeah,
of. I see a bad driver, in my opinion, and then for some reason I lose my self-awareness. But then I mean, self-awareness is also observing yourself and going, oh my, I've just reacted there. I
yeah,
didn't. There's no need to react like that. So and
yeah.
catching yourself, but you do get hijacked by the mind.
Well, yeah. So tell me, let's kind of delve into your story, because I'm sure people are curious. Was there a specific moment when that idea of self-awareness really hit you?
Yes, there was. I mean, when I look back, it's kind of been bubbling under the surface, but I've never really followed it. I never really kind of dug deep. But there was one time, and it sounds a bit, um, yeah, it sounds a bit funny, the story, um, a bit out there, but it was when I was going through my worst during my separation. I had two young kids. My wife had left me, and I didn't have the kids around. The two young sons at the time. I think they were around about 5 and 7, and it was awful to be without my kids. Um, and
Mm.
anyway, I kind of stooped into really a low depression, and I started to feel severe anxiety for the first time. I'd never really, I'd lived a fairly charmed life, before that, and I'd never really gone through this type of suffering. It was all pretty primal, and I was thinking, this is really, why I'm getting triggered by things. My mind won't stop. The mind chatter was relentless. It was, ruminating on the past. I could have done this. I should have done that. It was projecting into the future. Who's she with now? Who are they with now?
Mm.
And it was relentless. It tortured me. It really did. That's the only way I could describe it.
Yeah.
And then I went to pick up my kids from school one day, and then my ex-wife was there, but the kids started to talk about this new partner in her life, and I knew this guy, and I knew he was a restaurant owner. And I just went into caveman mode. I'm not a violent man, but I just couldn't, help myself. I got in my car, and it's a surprising I didn't have a crash on the way. And I went to his restaurant, and I started to bang on his doors. And this was school pickup, so it was about 3:30 in the afternoon. And usually he would have been there prepping for that evening, but fortunately it was a Monday, and the restaurant was closed on a Monday. And I mean that fortunately, because um, life could have gone so differently for me, because I can understand rage and people having this anger inside, that is uncontrollable. And at the time I did. There were windows on the outside of the restaurant, and I was banging on those windows. And then there was this moment where I could then see my reflection, and it was someone I didn't recognize.
Mm.
I kind of was, I wasn't sleeping. I had bags under my eyes. I looked grey. I was drinking as well. Not during the day, but I mean, obviously that was affecting me during the day, because I was
Yep.
drinking over night time. So I was just totally irrational, and I saw this person that wasn't me. And then I had one of those out of body experiences, and I thought, this is not me. This is not who I want to be. And fortunately, there was the caretaker of the place where the restaurant was, where he came, and he knew me, and he tapped me on the shoulder, said, "Paul, you should leave. I don't want to have to call the police." And he calmed me down, and I went back to my car, and I went back home. And it was only a few days later where this image of me observing myself started to pop into my head.
Mm.
And then it started a catalyst of this journey of, when the student's ready, the teachers will appear. Well,
Yes.
books started to appear. There was, I kind of had this fascination for meditation, because I was thinking, observing my thoughts. I'd heard people talk about that before, and I thought meditation was really woo-woo. And I thought people who did meditation were hippies. But I I kind of came across this book called Meditation for People in a Hurry.
Perfect. I
Yeah,
think there's a lot
that's
of
right.
people who need that book.
That's right. So I started to read it, and it just started to make sense. And then I started to join a meditation group, and this started to start me on my journey of healing. And then it was kind of more spiritual, the meditation that I was doing. So the teacher, he was from India, very good, very calm, relaxing. But he started to um, teach me in the way that imagine that you close your eyes and imagine that your mind is a blue sky, and thoughts are like clouds, and those clouds drift across, and you just observe them, which is like
Mm.
mindfulness really, but zap them. So pop them when they come in, pop your thoughts, so that you end up with a blue sky. And so I started to meditate like that, but I was being an engineer. I want to know where these thoughts are coming from, because I started to observe myself, and I thought, Paul, you're crazy. What thoughts were there? What? It was like observing a tiny fly, trapped in a glass, and you're looking everywhere for these thoughts that just coming from nowhere. And so that started me on a journey, not only of meditation, because I did try to master this popping of clouds and having blue sky, which is some days you can do, most days you can't. But meditation has been part of my life from then. And then I kind of moved into mindfulness. Going back to that original time where the lights went on, if you like, someone told me about The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle, and I started to read that
Yep.
book. And then I saw of um, his aha moment because he had a similar out of body experience as to, he obviously describes it much better than I did, but he starts to talk about who is this person that's observing me? Who's this person that I'm listening to and talking to, is observing and narrating my story. And that was just a great book, a great first book to lead me into spirituality. The Power of Now, recommended to everyone. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember reading that too. And it's funny, I could probably go and read it again now and read it in a really different context just because of the work that I've done in between reading. So I'm a different person to who I was 5, 10 years ago, simply because of the life that I've lived, the experiences that I have. So yeah, I love that, and I think that's actually it's a good reminder for me. Go and reread that book. So it's really interesting to me just to hear that story around that moment and just that recognition in a moment and almost what it took to bring that into being is this seeing yourself in the mirror and almost kind of going, hang on, who is that? That is not how I identify with myself. There's that separation sort of feeling in that moment. So who was the one noticing? That's the
Well,
big question, isn't it?
that's when my inquisitive mind begins to observe things, and I guess it's where, I'm not the first human being to have an experience like that, and I'm I've I've travelled the world and seen lots of different cultures when I was part of the Foreign Office, the Foreign Service, and I started to realise that this is where religions are born. This separation, this observation, this maybe
Mm.
spirit, soul. I don't know. I like to see it as kind of like energy that is observing and part of you that is the wiser person in you. Um, and and I think I've seen people do similar things and explain similar things to me, but then they put the lid back on, because they either get scared or they find another relationship to actually immerse themselves in, and then they get lost again in the humdrum of life and busyness of life, and that lid goes on. But I think the longer you have the lid off and you start to observe, you can't put the lid back on again.
I know
even,
it's
even though
true,
you
isn't
want
it,
to.
though? Yeah, and I
Yeah.
think that's such a good point because the more we cultivate self-awareness, the more self-aware where we become. And we'll talk a little bit later about, the traps that can lead to. But I love doing breath work in the mornings. It's sort of part of my morning routine. And I was lying there, it was yesterday actually. I was lying down on the mat and I found myself, yeah, I'm doing the breathing. And then I started thinking, and it was exactly as you were saying, there's thought bubbles, thought bubbles, thought bubbles. And then at some point, I just said, "Oh, I can see all this happening. Who is observing all of this?" Because I know it's like I knew I was there, but in the thinking of those thoughts, I was disconnecting from my body and from the experience, which is what, a lot of what the power of now is about. And it was just funny because I've done a fair bit of work over the years, and then to find myself, oh yeah, I'm doing my morning routine. And I think when we have a routine that we get in is actually when we'll disconnect. So, you were talking about driving home before. When we drive a car, so often you'll get from point A to point B and you cannot remember the drive because you're just doing it on autopilot. And in doing that, you're not necessarily present to what you're doing. And it was just interesting when I was lying there yesterday, I went, hang on, hang on. I'm meeting with Paul tomorrow. I need to make sure I get back and reconnected with my body and just that awareness in that moment. It was just such an interesting little moment in my life yesterday.
Mm. Yeah, and I find that nature plays a big part. I love to go on nature walks, and I went to a beautiful property yesterday, up in the hills of Doon in there,
Hmm.
and I felt really connected to the land there, and not in a native way or anything like that. It's just
Yeah.
something. Part of my healing when I went through, my separation and my depression and the anxiety, not only was people and teachers and you know uh, unconditional love from people who are strangers,
Mm.
but it was also walking by myself, in the national park. And we've got a beautiful national park in Noosa, and that I didn't know why, but that was certainly healing for me, jumping into the sea
Mm.
and walking the national park and just be immersing myself in nature. It was almost like a meditation. But it did something to me. It kind of, I recommend anyone just get out and ground yourself, go in nature, go for long walks in nature. It really, you don't have to understand it, but it really, really
Yeah.
helps. Yeah.
Yeah, just that barefoot on the grass
Mm,
helps, you know,
yeah.
but that I mean, I know the walk you're talking about in Noosa, and it is absolutely one of the most spectacular walks, I think, in the world. It really is incredible. So, when we're beginning that journey of self-awareness, do you think people get to choose their awareness, or does it kind of arrive like it did for you when we're suffering one of those sort of peaks, one of those moments?
I think some people are lucky enough to discover it early on in life. They're very rare, but there are people like that I've talked to,
Yeah.
and they seem to have been more aware, early on. There are people who think they kind of were self-aware early on, and the more you speak to them, you realise they're not. So there are those as well. Um, and
There's a
then,
lot of those.
but
I say that with absolute love, but I
yeah,
actually agree. There's a lot of those people.
that's right. There are. Yeah, and I guess my experience is that when you are suffering, even though it's the worst thing in the world at the time,
Mm,
that is your opportunity. It's life saying, "Hey, I'm giving you an opportunity here." So it depends on how you look at it. Most people they suffer and then they don't learn anything from it, and they go back in and they go into the circle of life, of, living, suffering, and
yeah,
so I was I I guess I see myself as lucky. I see that moment in life as a gift. And I've even thanked my ex-wife for the gift she gave me at the time,
yeah.
um, because it was a gift. It changed my life, and it's actually enriched my life beyond anything I would have thought. And I feel like I'm a very rich, wealthy person, even though financially I'm not.
You are
Yeah,
a rich, wealthy person,
yeah.
and I just know, like, we sometimes walk together, and the insights and the genuine love and connection that you always bring is something that I always feel whenever I'm with you, and I just love that about you. No amount of money can ever buy that. That's a feeling.
Well, that's likewise.
Thank you. So let's talk for a
Yeah.
minute, because I'm always really curious about this experience for other people around self awareness. Is sometimes it doesn't feel like self awareness is a gift. Sometimes it feels, when we overdo it and overplay it and we become sort of almost hyper self aware. I'm really curious what your experience is of that, or your experience of working with other people around that sort of that hyper self awareness.
Yeah, I guess I've been through that phase where, especially early on, when all these light bulbs are going on and you're so excited to tell people, and you think, you should be doing this, you should be doing that, and people are looking at you and they're as if I turned into this hippie that I used to think people were, or this kind of like weirdo, that's talking about
Oh, you're still a weirdo.
observing his thoughts. What are you going on about, you nutter? You know, so I've been through that stage, but then the more you go on the journey, the more you understand yourself. And I think it is a journey of yourself, because you kind of don't want to act, you kind of like don't have the need to go and help people or fix people. And for a man, that's difficult, because we obviously like to fix people,
Well, that is such a good point, and I want to stop you there, because I think that's a really valid point, and then that is an experience that's a little bit different to women, in that men, their natural instinct is to be the fixer of things. And I know if I go to my partner with, oh, I'm having this problem, he wants to fix it for me, and I'm like, no, I can fix it. I just want you to listen to me around it.
Yeah, well, I'm done the same, and I've done some men's work as well. I find men's work very frustrating, because they they tend to want to fix it themselves, and the knowledge they've gained is basically their version of the truth, and that they tend to stick to that. And if there's no manual, they get confused, so we need a manual to follow if it's not technical. And I'm there, I'm looking in the mirror here, so I'm all of these things.
Yeah.
So, but we are cut slightly differently. And I guess, the framework that I've developed came from a man's mind, and I've had women who've looked at it and said, "Oh, this is definitely for a male." And
Oh,
that's
really?
yeah, well, and I don't think so. I don't think so at all. But I think what it is it's these women tend to be more spiritual, and they kind of are like yogis in things like they like energy and chakras and white light, and so they're very very spiritual. So when you look at, because what I try and do with the ship of thoughts is make it so that it's explainable, from a technical point of view. So I'm looking at the mind like a system diagram, like I would, because I'm a systems engineer, so that's what I would do. But you get great systems engineers that are females who have got minds like that. So I don't think it's a male female thing. I think more males think that way, but lots of females do as well, and they like a diagram to look at. And the way my mind works is like, as a systems engineer, you kind of think in symbols and images, and I didn't really know didn't observe any of this at all. I just learned that way. Because I started off as an electronics engineer, and so that, if you look at an electronics diagram,
Yeah.
they're full of capacitors and transistors and kind of diodes, and it's all symbols. And like unbeknown to me, from the age of 16, I started to learn that way. And like when I looked at a system diagram or electronics diagram, I could understand it, and just by looking at it visually. And
Mm.
that's how an engineer is trained, is to learn with, to try and look at a symbol and know what it does in your imagination. A, a lot of good systems engineers are creatives as well, from my
Well, it's
experience. Yeah.
I love that description that you just gave around that thinking in symbols. And I think for many of us who aren't engineers, the closest we get is kind of mathematics, where we go,
Mm.
okay, we don't write, say, 2 plus 2. We don't write plus for plus. We use, the plus sign. We know what that means because we're trained like that. But if I had to think like that about everything, I think I'd probably get a little confused.
But do you know what? When I did my traveling, because all this is looking back, I thought, oh God, we use symbols everywhere. Because that
Yes.
I used to do a team building business, which used symbols and images to help create paintings, and I used to
Yeah.
and it was called Doodle Jam, yeah. And so people doodled and used those symbols and images to represent certain things, like what's 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 key to the future of the business and what motivates me. And but what I started to observe is that we're using symbols and images all the time. And if you go into an airport, you navigate that airport with symbols and images, because you might not know the language of that particular country.
Yeah.
And I know a
Even
lot of,
getting to the airport, right?
yes,
We know the
absolutely.
plane sign on the
You know
street
what
signs.
you know what arrivals and departures are by the planes.
Mm.
You know where the escalators are. You know where the toilets are. Just by symbols and images. And there's a universal language that we all have, for that. And then, in your particular country, you'll have all these symbols and images that are guiding you in any particular shopping center or what have you. So unbeknown to us, we're using symbols and images all the time, because that gets to the mind very quickly, and we can map it
Mm.
all out using the imagination. We've got fantastic brains that we can, solve complex problems using this imagination that can use the past to project into the future. And we're very, very intelligent people. It's just that many of us act like apes.
Yes. All I can say is yes to
We don't
that.
use our intelligence. Yeah.
So if we just move back for a moment, because I don't want to lose this thread of conversation around sort of almost the cost of self-awareness, or this idea of hyper self-awareness. You mentioned earlier about how when we start becoming self-aware, we can also feel like we don't have anything in common with our friends anymore, because and it's not that we operate on different levels, but you just lose this kind of, I guess, tolerance for noise, and I liken it to maybe you wanting to go deeper with people as well as you go deeper with yourself, you seem to have this ability to go deeper with others. Is that what have you experienced around that?
I've now attracted, maybe by choice, I don't know, but people in my life who are on a journey. Now we're all
Mm,
different layers of self-aware, um, and who's to say what is good and what's who's at what level. I don't like it
yeah.
when people start to say, well, I'm more self-aware than you, and that doesn't work
Oh,
with me. It just means that everyone's got a bit of wisdom and gold to share with each other, and I learn
yeah.
from everyone. And I guess I like people who are on the journey now, who they admit that they don't know everything and they're learning. Like me, you tend to lose a bit of your ego in the whole thing. Is that I don't have to be right at all, and I'll only help or talk to people who want to who ask questions. So I'm not
Mm,
there to promote my particular flavor of self awareness at all. I've gone through that, and I'm, you start to get comfortable as to who you are, and I think age comes with that as well. A bit of wisdom comes with age. Um, you
I hope
start,
so.
but you start to reflect, and you've obviously got less
Yeah.
life forward than you have when you're back, and you look at life, and I look at life as all the mistakes and all the lessons and all the achievements I've done. That I kind of look at that as the sea of life flowing the only way it can. It's unfolding, and now I look forward and I see that everything you can learn from, and even when you think you've you've got life sussed, life comes along. I call it the universal baseball bat. You know, it,
Yeah, I've
it
been hit with that a few times.
it comes from nowhere, and you go, oh my
Yeah.
god, here we go again, and and then it's a matter of using all the tools you've learned to look at, well, is there anything positive? And you sometimes you think, no, there can't be anything positive in this. This is not right. But if you look at life, I mean, Wayne Dyer, who's another one of my
Yeah.
great teachers, um, he said, if you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. And I think that sums up self-awareness. So even when you're suffering and you go, well, if I change the way I look at this, the things I look at change. And it doesn't happen overnight, but but over weeks and maybe months, you kind of look
Yeah.
back and you go, absolutely, there was things to learn from that, and there were gold, and I can see that there was things that I need to learn, and I've grown from that, and it can get you out of trouble far quicker instead of, because I work in the mental health industry and I have been
Yeah.
doing for many years, and I speak to people every day about mental health, and much mental health is because people lack self awareness, and they suffer in their own heads because they don't separate themselves, and they don't look at the origins of where their thoughts are coming from, or why they're suffering with anxiety, and why they feel hopeless and overwhelmed and burnt out.
Yeah.
There's reasons for that. But it's not easy to learn, and it takes time and patience.
Yeah. And I think particularly when you've already gone down that road of, suffering from the thoughts that you're having, it can be it's really difficult to be able to pull yourself out of that. And there's all manner of reasons right now in the world. Like if we look at what's happening right now in the world, I look at it and I find it hard to contend with when I see, people, countries bombing each other and people dying, and it's so hard to comprehend. We live in a time with all that we know that this is still the solution considered by people as the best one, and this is what we're doing. And then, when we take it that step further, I know right now I have to be really mindful of what I feed my mind at the moment, what I'm looking at, because it would be really easy to feel completely overwhelmed by everything. And so for me, that's I guess my little bit of self-awareness around, okay, what am I feeding my brain? As opposed to that next step, which we're really talking about is, okay, I notice what's happening in my brain. Now, what am I going to do about it, or what am I going to do differently?
An online course I have is called The Captain's Journey. It's based on the Ship of
Hmm.
Thoughts framework. And it's where a young, lad who's represents the immature me that wakes up and starts to observe himself. So he starts to become self-aware. And this journey takes the young boy, he navigates the ship, and he's got the wise owl called Albert, which represents
Hmm.
wisdom, and and it represents all these people that I gained great wisdom from over the years, and so he goes on this journey, and there's six islands that he has to visit to become the captain of his ship, which is where he starts to master his mind. Um, and I
Hmm.
say that tongue in cheek, because you can never master your mind, but you can
Yeah.
have a good go at it.
Yeah.
Um, and the fifth island, which is obviously he's traveled through quite a few islands before he gets to that, is the island of wisdom, and that's where he shoots a flare of wisdom, and that takes him off his ship. So this is where he can start to observe himself, and he floats all the way into space. And I get it. It doesn't sound as zany as it is. This is all. I'm an engineer. I'm not a woo woo. It's all science based.
Yep.
It's based on men walking on the moon. And I think the most important thing when we landed on the moon is turning back and seeing the Earth from outer space. And I think that was the
Mm.
most profound moment for the human race. And I think we miss that. I think we look at ourselves from an ego point of view and go, hey, we've actually, the Americans actually claimed the moon. Now, that to me is like is hilarious that we put a flag on the moon and claimed it, and then we look back and we thought, actually, we're all one. We're
Yeah.
all on the same planet, and there's no lines. And we all know things like John Lennon sang songs about it in the '70s, Imagine, and all of that. That there's, we're separated by these lines that are in our heads, and it's all based on our primal programming of of um, of tribes and safety in numbers, and having these beliefs and these nationalities and these cultures that separate us from all other humans. And the flare of wisdom is like this little boy looking back on the planet and actually going, well, why do we have wars if we're all one? We all share the same,
Mm.
this same beautiful pearl that is just is just a miracle, because
Yeah.
they did a calculation, and I bring this into one of these analogies into this courses, sorry, this story or book, is that if you take one grain, the planet represents one grain of sand on this planet, and this one grain of sand is the only grain of sand amongst all the trillions and trillions of grain of sand on this planet,
Mm.
and that's the only one with life. And that to me is a miracle. And that's something
Yeah.
that self-awareness has done for me, is realize that I'm actually a miracle. And like everyone else is a miracle as well, but they just don't know it. And like if you knew you were a miracle, you wouldn't kill other miracles because they're so precious.
Yeah.
And that's not religious, it's not spiritual, it's scientific. That, I guess, my mind has just been blown by the more and more insights that I get, the more and more I go on this journey of self-awareness. And then it becomes, you kind of become more and more distant, and you observe
Yes.
life playing out. And that's what I'm seeing now in the Middle East is I'm observing the ego, belief,
Yeah.
separation, and everyone's got these strong beliefs. And then I understand the ego, people are looking, there's obviously other things that are underlying. I mean, I haven't been in the Foreign Office for 20 odd years. I know that what's said and done diplomatically and said to people, is not really the root cause of it. There's obviously power and other strategies in play, and it's it's a kind of it's like a chess game. But
Oh,
we,
it really is.
yeah,
But it's
oh,
played by, and it's played at that level where people like you and I, we're like, we can only really observe in the way, of what's happening. And yet the power of us being self-aware and remembering that connection, I certainly think that that is really important in our world today. And the more people that can do that, I think we can hopefully start to alleviate some of this. But right now, there are a lot of people suffering and going through absolute hell.
Yeah, on both sides. On both sides. I'm not taking sides here,
Yes.
but
No,
on
I
both
agree.
sides across the world, the people who tend to rise to power are the people who sacrifice families and relationships and just live in life and lose perspective, and they just tend to actually rise to the top, and we allow it. So us as a human race allow it, and um, and
Yeah.
and the only way we're gonna solve anything like this is us to start to respect each other's beliefs. All we probably all need to do a little bit of self awareness, and then we can reciprocate and respect other people's beliefs. We don't have to buy. I don't buy into you know people's or everyone's beliefs, but I respect them. And if we can
Totally.
reciprocate that on both sides, because it takes both two people to actually create a truce. Um, Yeah,
Yeah.
and it's like the analogy is throwing spears at each other. If you throw the first spear, then someone else is going to throw a spear back. But if you stop throwing spears, they're going to stop throwing spears because they've got nothing to hit, or you don't care.
Yeah.
So
Well, you've taken away the game of it, right?
yeah,
In
that's
in many
exactly.
respects.
Yeah.
So you obviously spent 20 years traveling the world doing your work, and sort of your self-awareness came at the end of that? Is
Yeah,
that
I
is
wasn't
that right?
self-aware when I was doing that. I had a massive ego. Just ask my
Yeah.
ex-wife.
So so when you look back and you reflect on those experiences that you had overseas and who you were sort of as you go through that, what are your thoughts around that? If we were born somewhere else, would we still be the same person? Like, you've seen all the cultures, you've met thousands of people elsewhere.
Yeah, that's a layered question, really. The essence of us, I don't think would change, but definitely what we believe. I mean, we need to believe, especially during those early years, those development years, we need to believe what our parents believe so we fit in to our tribe. So that's culture, religion, anything like that. This is something that if you start to look at things from a global level and step back and look at what the human mind has created, and it is the human imagination that's created this, is that we've created, nationalities, groups, and it's all based on ego and our primal thinking of, I call them the books of we and them, because we is our tribe and them is the people that are outside our tribe. And we kind of swap and change these different tribes, because I can one day think I'm British and then next thing, I'm hating other British people because they support Manchester United and I support Liverpool. So it can swap and change.
Context.
Yeah, or a political party. If I'm into politics,
Yeah.
then 1 minute I'm British, and I think that some of these great minds, they say that we would probably come together as a planet if we were attacked by aliens, because then we'd say, oh, well, actually, we're
Mm.
humans, and we're all in this together, and let's protect ourselves. And
Yeah, and
yes,
then it would become us versus them,
yes, exactly.
whereas
Yeah.
right now we're in these clusters of us versus them being on the same planet.
Our natural instinct is to live together as one and respect each other's beliefs. But we always have these fanatics that rise up. And like,
Mm.
my belief is the only belief, and that's the only way to, that's my opinion, and I'm right and you're wrong. And that's where conflict starts, because then they'll meet someone else who has different beliefs, but they say, well, I'm right and I'm wrong. And then that's the ego. And I explain that in this in this video storybook that I call them pufferfish.
Oh, puffer fish.
Yeah, because they puff up and they adapt and they change color to suit their particular, and then they create people who, these pufferfish have colors and they have beliefs that represent these colors, and then they kind of like recruit other people who've got the same colors, and what the colors represent beliefs, not races. And then you have these more and more people who get validated and feel more secure, but the belief at the end of the day is the thing that's flawed, but they can't see that because that's what protects them. And I guess having
Well,
self.
I think it's actually the thing is my beliefs are right. Like this is the right belief is where we get ourselves into a lot of trouble because the reality is with 8 billion people on the planet, we're not all going to agree on probably on anything.
Mm,
And so just having that basic sense of respect and curiosity to understand, well, what does that belief mean to you? Why do you have that belief rather than my belief is right, you should believe that too?
mm. Yeah, and it's like I was born a Roman Catholic, but I don't consider myself, Roman Catholic or Christian anymore. But I highly respect the Christian religion for what it helps people and it helps
It
take.
does.
It's
Yeah.
it's a wonderful, wonderful religion, and I'm sure that's the same for Islam and Buddhism and all the other religions, out there. I'm sure it makes people feel safe and makes them want feel belonged, and it's helped many, many people heal. But at the end of the day, the beliefs that we have, we should question those, especially if these beliefs are making us feel superior and separate, and we start to dehumanize other human beings or other human groups. That's when
Yeah.
things go awry. Is when if your belief system is dehumanizing other human beings, then get out of it. Learn some self-awareness. That's my
Yeah.
message. Yeah.
And for me, that goes either way when we think about either when we make ourselves when we feel superior, but equally when we feel inferior. To me, I think they're both these sort of extremes, opposite extremes, and
Mm,
it's like, no, we're actually all equal. We don't have to be one or the other, and but these belief systems that have us feeling, superior or inferior, and I think so many people do walk around with that little feeling of, "Oh, I'm inferior to others," and it's just simply not true.
mm. Absolutely. Yeah. And we've even had not only religions, but we've had political movements, ideologies like communism, socialism, and all this that have had similar beliefs. I like the phrase from the Animal Farm. The book The Animal Farm, where
Yeah.
as yes, the pigs were saying all animals are equal, except some animals are more equal than others. And that can be said for every kind of culture, religion.
It's
Yeah,
kind of how it feels, isn't it?
it
Isn't it?
does.
So
Yeah.
so you've got so all of these the experiences that you've had and this awareness, this opening, that moment in front of the restaurant when you came to recognize, the place of self-awareness, you've developed this awesome, awesome program. So if there's someone listening who kind of goes, "Yeah, I'd like to get a bit better at self-awareness. I'm a bit curious about this." Where would you recommend they start just on their own journey?
Well, I've designed this video storybook. It was originally a 6-week course, and now I've nutted it down into a video storybook that I hope is a bit of fun.
Mhm.
It takes 3 hours to go through, but obviously, you might want to binge watch it or you might want to take time to watch it, but you can actually go online. I've created an app, and this is, I love AI in this age of
Yeah.
AI, is someone like me can go and create an app and it's not perfect. It's free at the moment. People can go to, a ship of
I'll make
thoughts.
sure the link is in
Yeah,
the show notes for sure.
but it's a
So
shipofthoughts.com. But
I was thinking more along the lines of we love to learn like a tangible practice of some sort. Do you have a particular little practice that you use that you could share with us?
oh, well, I think mindfulness is a really good. I mean, you can go on YouTube and learn a little bit of mindfulness. They do mindfulness courses. I think mindfulness is a good start because that's when you start to observe yourself. And this journey of self-awareness, it is a personal journey, but it's also important that you find like-minded people who are on the same thing, and you'll find that these
Mm.
people don't profess to know everything. So if you find a guru that says they know that their version of the truth is the only version of the truth, run a mile, because anyone who's on a true journey of self-awareness would be fairly humble, to be honest with you, because they don't know it all. And the more you do this, the more you realize the little you know. So
Yeah. And what works for me is not necessarily what works for you. So when
yes,
I hear someone say, "No, I've got it. You've got to do it my way," I'm like, "Well, actually, there's a lot of different ways. There's not
Yes.
one way to eat an elephant, you know?
Yeah.
There's lots of ways and things that we can practice. I know one of the things I love to do is that, bringing mindfulness into daily life is just when you brush your teeth,
Mm,
be there and brush your teeth, like,
mm,
feel the toothbrush on your teeth, and it's really interesting when you then try and do that with your non-dominant hand, because I'm right-handed, I tend to brush my teeth with my right hand. When I then change that, there's a whole different set of things going on in my mind to when I just go about it in an automatic fashion.
mm. Yeah, that's a great way to wake you up a little bit, is to realize, because we do go into these trances, in our cars when we brush our teeth and we go to work, and we don't snap out of it and smell the flowers. And sometimes it's good just to lift your head up and smell the flowers, breathe as you do, which is a
Yeah.
great practice. Smell, use your senses to just bring you back in to the now, which is what Eckhart Tolle tries to do with his work. Yeah.
Yeah, very much so, very much so. Oh, look, I think, Paul, I could just keep talking to you about this forever, and at some point we do need to finish off. But one of the things I love to do is just to close each of my guest podcasts with a little set of questions that I
Yeah.
just like to ask. So I'd like to just ask you those now. So, what brings you most alive right now?
What brings me most alive right now? Well, if that is walking the national park, I must admit. It's
Mm,
when I get into nature and I see the beauty of this planet, from this little speck of an ant that I am on this planet.
yep.
Um, and I just see the awe that is all around us. And I guess that, if I'm feeling a bit wobbly or ungrounded, then I'll go for a walk in nature. And I'm lucky enough to be right next to it, in Noosa. So I'm blessed,
We're so lucky. We are so lucky where we live. So, what would your bravest self say to you about this chapter of your life?
Thank God you learned self-awareness, Paul, because those universal baseball ball bats, of which I've had a couple, over the last couple of years, because I had, cancer, and I also was made redundant after 13 years in a job.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, all these challenges that would have probably sent me in a spiral, I learned to, navigate as the captain of my ship. And I'm so grateful that of all the wisdom I've learned over the years, because it all kind of comes together. Yeah. So that would be
And
that. That would be that.
yeah.
That would be learning self awareness.
Yeah, and it really does help you get through those times. Like, I remember when you were made redundant, and we were sort of introducing ourselves around this circle before we walk it, as we do in this group. And you're I don't remember the words exactly, but I remember the energy of them, and it was like, well, I'm on a new adventure right now, and I don't know what it looks like, but I'm
Mm.
excited for where it goes.
Yeah.
And I think that was such a positive way to sort of view that time.
Mm. That's right. It kind of helps you look at life positively,
Yeah.
because and that doesn't stop you, having anxiety and stress as when you first hear the news and you get shocked and what have you. But
Yeah.
it's your response to that, and that's self-awareness really. It's like there's a time when you react as a human being, but then what you do next, and that's where
Yeah.
self-awareness can help you go, well, actually, I've got two ways to look at this. I can actually fall into a heap, or I can be positive and continue moving forward. And Einstein had this great phrase, which I tell my kids, is that life is like riding a bicycle. To keep your balance, you've got to keep on moving forward. Yeah, so keep on pedaling, Einstein said, and
Keep
that,
on
and it's
pedaling.
very true.
Yeah.
Mm.
So what's something small but powerful that helps you feel more like yourself?
Yeah, it started off small. It's walk of wisdom, I think.
Ah,
That
yeah.
started off small, is only a handful of friends. Nikki, Mike, and Tony, and then we thought, well, listen, every time we walk together, we actually gain some wisdom from each other. There's no ego there. We all learn from each other. There's no one person who leads the group. And then we thought, why don't we share this with other people? And so that's where Walk of Wisdom was born, is that we've gone from 4 people to 40 regularly now. And everyone, we do that walk up and down Gympie Terrace, and then someone gets the opportunity to do a 10-minute talk, as long as it's nothing to do with politics or religion. We're very happy for anyone to talk about anything.
Yeah,
And it's beautiful to
it is
see
amazing. Yeah.
that. So as I say, that really, I look forward to Fridays and the inspiration everyone else gives me, and I learn it with the walk and who I talk to, and also with the talk, the 10-minute talk that someone does at the end.
Every week I learn something from there. It's amazing.
Me too.
And our final question, if you could gift people in midlife one reminder, what would that be?
Yes, I think the obvious one is, like, life begins at 40, and like my life changed. It was
Mm,
difficult, but don't be afraid to learn new things, and like get out of your belief bubble, observe yourself, and understand that you you could possibly be in a trance, and to snap out of it will change your life. And it's not easy, but self-awareness can help you do that on that journey. And
yeah.
then it opens up a whole new world. I guess the analogy I use in the Ship of Thoughts is like, it's like we live our lives in caves, and Plato had don't you remember the analogy of the allegory of the cave? It's a fantastic kind of like comparison to the way we all live. And I guess it's like living in a cave, and that's the way I felt. I'm living in a cave for 40 years of my life. I'd seen a light every now and again, but I'd ignored it. But then going out into that, brave new world, and
Mm.
and and then you see the world differently, but it enriches your life. But it's scary, so it's not for the faint-hearted.
It really is. It can be a bit scary, absolutely. Uh, for me, I think that, beautiful serenity prayer sort of
Mm,
rounds
yeah.
off what self-awareness and wisdom really is, in that, God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. And I think that's where self-awareness, like, for me, when we can have that level of self-awareness, then life isn't easier by any means, but we can feel more at peace and more at home with ourself and who we are.
Fantastic prayer.
Yeah.
I love that prayer, by the way. Yeah,
Yeah.
it does sum up self-awareness quite well.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Paul, this has been an absolute pleasure. I feel like, I'm going to be listening to this over and over again, because I think it's such a good way just to kind of start a day and think about, well, how am I showing up today? Who am I showing up as being today? Where can I develop a bit more self-awareness? And I love that gift that you have given everyone that listens to this. And as I said, I will be including the Ship of Thoughts in the show notes for anyone that's listening. Just go, as Paul said, this is free at this point. Go and jump on and go through it, because the reality is we will always learn something if we're open to learning.
Absolutely. Couldn't have said it better myself.
So thank you, Paul, for being on Midlife Unfiltered in this episode. It has been a pleasure.
Yeah, no, the pleasure's all mine. Always is with you.
Thanks for tuning in to Midlife Unfiltered. I hope today sparked something meaningful and reminded you of what's possible in this season of life. If this episode lifted you up, share it with someone who could use the reminder. Subscribing will make sure that you're notified when a new episode is released, and leaving a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify also helps more people discover our little corner of midlife truth-telling. You can always reach out through Facebook, Instagram, or LinkedIn. I love hearing from women who are walking this path with me. Interested in working with me? You'll find everything you need at margitcruice.com. And remember, midlife isn't an ending. It's your invitation to feel more alive than ever. See you next week. And now the legal stuff. The content in this podcast is provided for general information and inspiration only. It does not constitute medical, legal, or psychological advice, nor is it a substitute for independent professional care. Margit Cruice is not a registered health professional. You are responsible for your own choices and outcomes and should always seek advice from an appropriately qualified professional.